Today, you are getting a very special training that was previously exclusively for my clients. But this is so fundamental to your success as a business owner that I knew that I needed to share it with you. I really want you to learn how to confidently raise and communicate your rates. And I'm going to share with you step by step how to do that in this episode of Be a Better Lawyer. Hello, my friends. How are you doing today? I want to share something with you about this particular episode because it's really important. It might be really easy for you to blow this off as something just to listen to as a podcast, something to kind of have in the background. I want to encourage you, if that's how you're used to listening to podcasts, that you don't do that with this episode because you are definitely going to want to take notes and you're going to want to listen to it again. Seriously, if you're in your car right now, make sure that you message yourself. You make sure you put this on your calendar to go through this episode again, because you can add tens of thousands of dollars to your practice easily and simply by doing what I teach in this episode. In fact, you can do that with a lot of the episodes that I share with you. You can be adding tens of thousands of dollars to your practice and work less by implementing what I share with you. I've had clients just from implementing some of the things I'm going to share with you here today add 15,000, 25,000 and more in a year. This is just a year span. So imagine that over a course of a 10-year career. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars more to their life in the practice, plus all the dividends and all of the investments that you can make with that money just by using the information I'm giving to you right here. So this episode is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to you, and I want you to treat it as valuable as that. Before we jump into it, I want to invite you to my brand new masterclass, a brand new training called Unlock Productivity. It's 5 essential strategies I'm going to share with you to 10x your productivity without rushing through your day. And if you find yourself feeling behind, no matter how hard you work, you cannot miss this masterclass. You can register by going to dinacataldo.com/October. In this new masterclass, you're going to learn the productive mindset that allowed me to become so productive that it not only made practicing the law easier for me, but it gave me the ability to build my business on top of my law practice. And as I could grow that on top of my law practice, eventually I could grow it to the place where I could leave it. So if you've been dreaming about working 4 days a week instead of 6, or making time to write your book, or even going on trips without your laptop, be sure to register for this masterclass now to save your seat. Head on over to dinacataldo.com/October to register. All right, now let's talk about confidently raising and communicating your rates. A little bit of context for this episode. Many of the lawyers that I work with own their own practice, or they dream of running their own business. I didn't want to use a lot of our time in our one-on-one sessions going through the same strategies over and over again, because my clients invest a lot to work with me and to hear my opinion on their exact situations and work through things. And I want that time to be spent doing that deep dive mindset work and helping them implement and strategize their specific situation as much as possible. So I created a monthly training as a bonus for my one-on-one clients to give them the skills they need and the things that they need to be aware of so that they could say, oh yeah, I didn't even know that this was something I need to be thinking about. I need to make sure I bring this to coaching. I need to make sure that I'm thinking about this in terms of my own practice. And I want you to do the same here with the information you're going to get in this training. You're going to hear me refer to talking to your ideal client in this episode. I have a lot of trainings in the vault for my clients, and I've done trainings on nailing your ideal client. I've created trainings around how to talk to your ideal client in order to attract them, whether it's through your social media posts, your emails, your podcasts, whatever it is that you're doing to attract your ideal client. And because if you run your own business, you've got to learn these skills because you're a marketer. If you run a business, you're also a marketer, and you don't want to lose precious time spinning and maybe even focusing your energy in the wrong direction. So I pulled this particular training from my expansive library of trainings because I know so many lawyers struggle with this particular topic. And I want to bring this to your awareness and bust some myths that I hear around rates and whether or not you should raise your rates and what your rates should be, quote unquote. So you can confidently do what you want to do in your practice instead of doing what other people think you quote unquote should be doing. Okay, this is about empowering you to make better decisions in your practice, decisions that are going to make you actually enjoy getting up out of bed and going to work. So if you're not driving, make sure you grab your notepad, your pen, make sure you put away your distractions and get ready to take some notes. If you are driving, I want you to put this on your calendar because this is literally, I am not exaggerating when I say tens of thousands of dollars of value are in this training here today. All right. So let's jump in, shall we? Welcome to how to confidently raise and communicate your rates. In this training, you're going to learn exactly when it's time to raise your rates. You will confidently raise and communicate your rates without discounting, and you'll know when it is time to remove or even add a practice area. Here's part one. Is it time to raise your rates? So this really starts by asking the question most lawyers just don't, which is, what do I want? And that is the most important part of this equation. In fact, it's a part that so many of us just neglect to ask ourselves. It sounds really simple to ask ourselves this, but it's not easy. So here's some context so we can take this concept further. First, let's talk about what rates can not be based on if you want to grow a practice based on what you want. The first thing you cannot base your rates on is what other people charge. Really easy to look around your town, your city, and ask, okay, what are other people charging? Don't do that because then you become a commodity, right? You start looking around and then there's a race to the bottom. And let me give you an example of this. So here's three different types of candles. The first one here is a very simple one. You can find this in the grocery store. It's $1.25, and you could find this anywhere, right? This is the lowest priced candle you could probably find. And then you have the middle of the road candle, and that one's, it's 31, buy two, get two free, right? It's got a discount going on. But then there is the metallic gold elephant from Thomas Ferrier. And they are known for their amazing scents, for their designer holders, candle holders, and the fun that they bring into their purchasing experience. And these are three very different types of candles. None of them are better than one another, right? But they are all designed for different people. And as long as you are comparing yourself to what other people are doing in the marketplace, you run the risk of the race to the $1.25 candle when you're the $175 candle. But here's an even starker contrast I want to show you, which is Thomson Ferrier also offers the $1,500 candle, the one that is the designer fragrance, the larger candle holder. This is the aspirational candle. And so we really want to understand our audience. We want to understand who we are speaking to. We want to understand what it is that we want so that we know the experience that we want to create for our clients. So I want you to just keep this in mind as you go through this training, as you make decisions around what you want your rates to be. What brand do you want to create? What is the experience you want to have in your business? Do you want to have an experience where you are dealing with people who have little piddly questions, right? Those are usually the people who are looking for the best deal, are the ones who have these really little tiny questions, and they're the ones who require the most work. The ones who are paying more don't require so much work. What experience do you want your clients to have? Do you want them to have the $1.25 candle experience, or do you want them to have the Thomson Ferrier candle experience? What do you believe your best clients think about your firm. Think about the service that you provide because you want to get into the head of those who are your absolute best clients. You're not racing to the bottom. You are there to serve only the top tier clients that you want to have within your practice. Now let's talk about the second thing you do not want to base your rates on, which is what you think potential clients or your current clients think, or what other people tell you your rate should be. And I put should in quotes. Why not? Well, other people have beliefs about money and what things are expensive and what things aren't expensive. And they have agendas, right? And as long as you allow their thoughts to dictate to you what's possible, even if it's well-meaning, you will stay within the confines of what others believe should be your reality. They are limited by their own beliefs, which were dictated to them too. And what comes to mind is a client that I was working with, she was working with an older partner, and that partner had, I think it was like a 325 cap on his rates. And at the time, she was maybe charging 175, 200, and she felt like it was absolutely impossible for her to raise her rates because she hadn't been practicing as long as this partner. She felt like, who am I to raise my rates? Like, who do I think I am to do that? But in reality, she could definitely charge 325. She had the experience, she had the reputation. And once she started working on her beliefs, she recognized that, you know, being limited by someone she's looking outside of herself and saying, oh my gosh, I'm limited by that. I shouldn't even get near that 300 mark or that 325 mark because, well, who am I? I'm not him. He's been practicing 10 more years than me. Well, that limited her. And now she's charging 325. So that is key, is the belief in yourself. And we're going to talk more about that as we go through the rest of this training. The third thing you do not want to base your decisions on rates on are fear, anxiety, worry, shame, or disappointment. These are feelings that are normal, but when we are having these feelings, when we're making decisions about rates, when we are having conversations about our rates, they can have a very detrimental impact. When we make decisions from our business from these feelings, it's reactionary. It's not measured. We want to make decisions for our businesses and our well-being from a calm place, even if it's a bit uncomfortable, because the discomfort is going to show us where our growth is, but the discomfort is normal. Okay. And we can be calm and uncomfortable. We can be clear-headed. We can think strategically, and we're not reacting to whatever emotion is coming up in our body in that moment. So now that you know what not to use to decide your rates, how do you know if it's time to raise your rates? Well, let's take a look at a couple things here. First, you want to know your numbers. I'm very practical about this. I think it creates a lot of safety in our body in order to do the things we want to do within our businesses when we know these numbers, when we understand that we have income coming in, when we understand that the roof's not going to disappear. We're going to be able to feed ourselves. So it's very important that we know these numbers for that reason. But another reason it's incredibly important to know these numbers is because it's going to show you where you're wasting your time and where you can invest your time more wisely. So I want you to really get out the pen and paper for this. This might be something that you're going to do outside of this training because you probably don't have these numbers off the top of your head. And you might not even be tracking these numbers yet. And if you're not tracking these numbers yet, that's okay. You just want to start. You just want to start tracking. You want to start understanding where the revenue is coming in and where you're spending most of your time. So first, you want to make sure you write it all out. Don't just guesstimate. Now, how many clients do you have? How much gross and net income are you making monthly? What are your expenses? Another question I would ask myself is, where are those clients coming from? Are they coming from referrals? Are they coming from ads that you have running? Are they coming from some other marketing source? And then what kind of referrals? I would break it down even further. Are they coming from client referrals? Are they coming from referrals that aren't clients, that maybe you have business relationships with those people? And what exactly are they purchasing within your practice? What services are they purchasing? So that way you have a breakdown of how many packages, let's say if you're an estate planner, they're purchasing one particular package over another. Or let's say you have multiple different services within your firm, you can see, okay, what are they purchasing? Are they purchasing bankruptcy packages, criminal law packages? Are they doing estate planning? You want to be able to see where the revenue is coming in. You also want to know other numbers. You want to know how much time is your assistant spending on matters. For each type of matter, how much time are you spending on them? And this is something where I think it can be a little, you can underestimate how much time you're actually spending on projects within for a client. I had one client where she had an estate planning practice, and we really parsed down where she was spending her time in terms of research, documentation, talking to clients, all of those things. And when she recognized that, she realized she was undercharging her clients by a ton. And it made it really difficult for her. She felt like a hamster on a wheel because she simply could not keep up with the work that was coming in. She couldn't do it because she wasn't charging what she needed to be charging in order to make a law practice that was going to have a profit. What exactly are you charging your clients for? Are there fees that you are or are not charging them for? I had another client who was doing really well on noticing that she was charging for her time. She even raised her rates, but then she went back and she noticed that she wasn't charging for things like filing fees or different things like that that were small, but they add up in her practice. And those are things that should be paid by the client. So start noticing these numbers. And this might be a process, right? You might not be doing this right now. That's okay. But go in and start keeping track of this. Really easy to do that with a Google Doc. It's a really great thing to have, like if you have an assistant, to have an assistant start doing and start getting that information. So just know that this is just data. These are data points you want to have so you can start making really clear strategic decisions around where you want to spend your time. Now, here's the one exception for looking at other people's rates to decide your own. It's this one. Okay. If you see counsel in your area charging more than you are for work that's subpar or just not as good as yours and getting lots of clients, use that as evidence that you can charge that rate for your top tier work. And I know you're producing top tier work. I know you're doing an amazing job, right? I don't attract people who do subpar work. That's just not how it goes here, right? So I want you to really, if you look around you, I had this happen just yesterday. I was talking to a client and she said, there's this guy in town and he's charging $400 an hour for the same work I do, and he's getting poorer results than I am. I don't think he's really all that. And I actually think that $400 is fair compared to what my clients would have to pay if they went out of town for me, right? She's in a smaller town. There are fewer options. And she's like charging something like $225 right now. And so when she saw that, it really ticked her off. It really was like a wake-up call for her to see that she was undercharging significantly and really overworking herself for something that, for actually a practice area, and we're going to get to this in a minute, that she didn't even really enjoy. So if she were to increase her rates to that, then she might say yes and really enjoy the work more because she wasn't so resentful of doing the work. All right. The second thing I want you to ask yourself, because you don't want to make decisions from that anxiety or you feeling disappointed or shame or anything like that, I want you to ask yourself how you feel. So for each area of your practice, I want you to think about how much you charge. Every single one of them. You want to do this for every single one individually because it's going to be different for each one. So when you think about each area, do you feel resentful, annoyed, heavy, or closed, right? If you don't really know the name of the emotion you're feeling, or maybe exhausted. Do you feel grateful, excited, light or open, or relaxed. This is really important because if you're going to go in with any of the emotions on the left, it's going to be really hard. Work is going to be a grind. But if you go in more often than not into your office with the feelings on the right, things are going to feel so much easier. So let's take a look at this. If you feel resentful, annoyed, or exhausted, you might notice these things: that you don't want to do the work, that you don't want to talk to those clients, that you find yourself procrastinating on anything to do with those cases. Sometimes they're the last thing that you will do on your list, and sometimes they'll just plain get skipped, right? You'll tell yourself for weeks on end, "Oh yeah, I got to get to that. Oh yeah, I got to get to that." And you don't get to it. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's not because anything has gone wrong. It's what's going on in your head when you think about those particular cases. And if you're feeling any kind of resentment or annoyance, anything like that towards those files or towards those clients, then it's going to make it really hard to get into action. You might be too tired to do the work. Now, that might also have to do with how you space matters on your calendar. That's something we can coach on, but just check in with yourself. Is this a time management problem where you're simply overloading yourself on your calendar and that's the only reason? Or really check in, really question yourself on this one. Is it because you kind of don't want to do the work because you kind of resent the fact that you have this work on your plate? Now, you might also notice this, that the quality of the work that you do for certain items is just less than you regularly see yourself doing. Now, raising rates might not be the answer for all of that, but it could be the answer. I also want to point out what some other potential problems could be just so that they are on your radar. Okay. And they are things that once they're on your radar, you can begin nipping them in the bud. So, other potential problems: you have matters that you wanted to say no to, but instead you said yes. And you could have done that for any number of reasons because you wanted them to like you, your client to like you, you wanted the referral to like you. You didn't want to say no because you thought that they would think something poorly of you, or you just felt like you had to say yes for the money. And I just want you to ask yourself, if you're doing this all the time, was this a one-time thing? Really check in on yourself if this is the reason if you think this is the problem. Another problem could be that you didn't realize the magnitude of the task you took on. But usually when we don't realize the magnitude of the task that we take on, we're also undercharging. So you likely, if this is you, may have taken on a large project and then quoted something incredibly low, and now you're just kind of spinning out on it. And this requires you to be uncomfortable yet again, because you need to communicate with that client and have a conversation with them. We're going to talk more about this as we move on in terms of how to deal with different emotions when it comes to your rates. But one of the things that can happen is that we beat ourselves up for not recognizing that the project that we bit off more than we could chew. And then we don't kind of backtrack. We feel like, oh, well, we can't tell the client that we can't do it. But if you do talk to the client, imagine what could happen, right? Let's ask yourself these questions. What's the worst case scenario if you go and you tell them that you can't take the task or that you need more money for the task? What's the worst case scenario, right? Just ask that of yourself so that you can see if it's really not going to be that big a deal. Like usually the worst case scenario is that we feel really bad, right? And that's something that I just want you to take a look at if that's you. Another potential problem could be that you're marketing services in your practice, in your business, that you don't truly enjoy at the expense of marketing things that you do enjoy. And usually we do this because we're so comfortable seeing the money roll in one area of our business. We're like, oh my gosh, that's just so great. It's so easy, right? Yeah, I don't like the work, but it's just so easy and it feels very steady. I feel very safe. But then we don't market the area of our practice that really lights us up. So maybe you have estate planning and bankruptcy cases, and you have some other contract cases, some real estate cases, and you keep doing the estate planning, but you hate the estate planning, but you keep marketing the estate planning when you really want to be marketing the bankruptcy cases. But you're not marketing the bankruptcy cases, even though if you would be a really simple fix to just start talking more about the bankruptcy cases, and you could start having more people come in on the bankruptcy cases and start filtering out the estate planning. So just take a look at those. So what I've noticed is that when lawyers raise their rates, a few things happen. They work less. They don't feel resentful when thinking about work or clients, so they feel more energized. They save time because they stop procrastinating on matters. And they're happier because they're spending less time procrastinating, and therefore they're spending less time beating themselves up for not doing the work. And they start attracting their best clients. They also notice that they have a full battery, right? They're fully recharged, they're energized, so they're better able to think strategically about what they want in their practice, in their life, and then they can start going after it. Their firm becomes more sustainable now that they have time freed up, and then they consider actually practicing the law longer. It's really easy to lose love of the law when you're exhausted and resentful all the time. But when you start to release some of that, it becomes easier to picture yourself in the law for a longer period of time. They enjoy their lives more. Other people notice that they're happier and they want to be around them more. And there are fewer arguments at home. It seems so strange to think that that could have an impact, but there's a real domino effect here because when you're happier at the office, you're going to be happier in other areas of your life. You bring what happens at the office home, whether you recognize it or not. When you're having a crummy day at the office, you're going to bring it home to all the people, and they're going to get the brunt of it because they're the people who are closest to you. That's just how we work. We know that they're not going to leave us, so we take it out on them. So notice that if this is happening to you, if you're noticing that you are having some of these symptoms come up, that they might be something that raising your rates can impact. So the reason most lawyers don't raise their rates or consistently discount their rates, right? Because if you're discounting, that's something very common when you don't have this belief in your offer. Okay, this shows up in two areas, in consults and in billing. So let me give you a few thought models so you can see how this shows up and you can see whether or not this is you. So let's just start with consults. So in the circumstances, you have a potential client in a consult that says words to you. Okay, it could be any words. It could be, I can't afford it. It could be anything that they say. I never believe anything anybody says, right? That's my job as a coach is I don't believe the words that come out of somebody's mouth. And as a lawyer, I highly recommend that you do the same. But then we have a thought about what they say, which is they can't afford it. And then we have a feeling because we've had a thought. And that feeling in this case is disappointment. But when we feel disappointed, it impacts how we behave. In this case, our actions or inactions are, well, we don't think about the big picture of how our firm runs. We don't think about whether or not this is a best fit client. Hint, if they can't afford to pay you, they're not a best fit client. You are needing them to say yes so that you feel better. So you're giving all of your power away to them, to your potential client, and you're not confidently standing in the knowledge that you are providing a first-rate service and you are deserving of first-rate pay. You make concessions like discounting, or you make their work a priority when it's objectively not a priority. So if you've ever had anybody walk into your office and say, hey, I need this thing done ASAP, and you say, okay, sure. And you don't even stop to take a look at your calendar. You don't even stop to look at the actual project and when the due dates really are, then you're making those concessions instead of just telling the client, well, this actually isn't a priority and here's why, right? Really opening up those channels of communication and letting them know that you are the authority in this space, right? You do know best. You know this area of law best. You know your business best, and you know what's in their best interest. That's why they're looking into hiring you. You tell them things like, okay, it'll be done ASAP instead of looking at your calendar. Or here's the other thing when you feel disappointed is you might give up on the conversation altogether. You might start tuning out, right? You might start thinking about dinner later, right? Because you just feel so bad. Your brain's like, I don't want to feel bad. So you just start thinking about other things you need to do instead of tuning in and getting curious and really wondering, like, well, what does that mean they can't afford it? Because that doesn't mean that they can't afford it, right? It means that they don't understand the value of the services that you are providing. Now, if they knew the value of the services you were providing, they would come up with the cash. If they could understand, oh, yeah, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense what you're saying to me, then they could confidently say, okay, well, maybe they really don't have the cash. Like, okay, I've looked at my finances, just doesn't make sense at this time. I do want to work with you. I just can't do it at this time. Versus like, well, I really need to get my kitchen fixed. It's like, well, do you need to get your kitchen fixed or do you need to make sure that this matter is handled so that you're not missing out on the dividends that are coming from whatever work you're going to be doing for them that is going to more than pay for the kitchen? Right? Because it's so easy for them to get scared, right? We all come from our own money beliefs. It's so easy for us to get scared. And the first answer out of our mouth is often no. And so we want to get curious and just be like, okay, well, is this something that you would be interested in if you could afford it? Because then you can find out more. You open up a conversation and you figure out what exactly is your objection. But you can't even get there if you're feeling so disappointed that you think they're going to say no or that they can't afford it. And then your brain shuts down. So the result is you block yourself from creating a practice with your best fit clients and that's sustainable long term for you. And you prevent yourself from being your highest service to them. Because think about the highest service to them is to help them with their problem. They came to you because they had a problem they wanted a solution to. And if you're not showing them the solution in a really clear cut way, then you're doing them a disservice. If you're tuning out instead, you're doing them a disservice. So let's say same situation, but this time you're thinking, oh my gosh, they need me. I have this come up so often. They need me. And it's like this momming kind of emotion, right? It's very protective, like, oh gosh, their situation is so bad. Like, oh my gosh, they really need me. That's where it comes up. But really, when you think about it, it's kind of condescending. It's like, oh my gosh, they need me. I need to come in and swoop in and save them. And if this is you, there's nothing wrong with you. We've actually kind of been socialized as women to do this, right? It's like, well, we need to take care of everybody except ourselves. And if this is happening to you, that's where it's coming from. You're swooping in to save them. You don't think about the big picture of how your firm runs. You don't think about whether or not this is a best fit client, right? You are needing them to say yes to you so that you feel better, right? Oh, they have to say yes because then I will feel better because I will be helping them. So you also do things like you make concessions, you discount, you make their work a priority when it's objectively not a priority, right? Same things. And you block yourself from giving your business what it needs, right? Because the business also needs to be fed, right? That's what revenue is it helps the business. And if you're not feeding the revenue into your business is not going to create a profit. It's not going to be able to pay for employees. You're not going to be able to expand if you want to expand. So just know that this is just one thing to take a look at if you start noticing yourself in this momming energy. Another situation where this comes up in consults is this thought, like they're going to say no, and fear comes up and we become really reactionary, right? You might become inconvincing energy. And so your brain's saying, well, how do I get them to say yes, right? I need them to say yes. Or maybe you give up and you're just like, oh, okay, I'm going to tune out because there's just no point to really think about this. Again, you're not thinking about the big picture of your business and thinking about the goals you have in your business. You're not thinking about whether or not this is the client that you want to have, right? And then you're not fully in service to them because you're focused on how you feel versus what they need, right? So you're not curious, you're not asking them questions, you're not really engaged in the conversation because your brain is tuning out, right? And you block yourself from serving them at your highest level. And I truly believe that we are here to really serve people. And if you have a heart-centered business, which I know you do, you want to serve people at your very highest levels. So I have 5 words for you. Get out of their wallets. I heard these words from one of my mentors and I said, yes, don't think about what's in their wallets. You don't know. You don't know like what kind of investments they have. You don't know what they're thinking about when they're thinking about where the money's coming from. I have thought about this for myself when I have made investments. And a lot of times when I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm not thinking about, oh, wait, I have all these other ways to access money. But if I have a conversation with someone and my memory gets jogged, I'm like, oh, yeah, I actually do have money to invest in that. And is that something I want to do? And I get to kind of think about it and ask myself that. But I need to be able to think about that. And if we're not able to ask those questions that are just like, yeah, so what is it that you want to prioritize here? Do you think it's important that you have an amicable divorce? Do you think that it's important to you to, what is exactly is important to you? What do you want to create here? And we're not asking those questions, then we're not doing them a service because we can't really help them get clarity on what they want and whether or not they want to invest funds in whatever services that you're offering. They don't need you. They will be fine without you. I promise you, if you don't take on their case at a discount, they will be fine. They will find somebody else. Or maybe they won't have anybody at all, and that's okay. They will figure it out. They are adults. You don't need them, right? You will be fine without them. This is really important. A lot of times when we go into situations where we talk about money, if we already kind of have a history of feeling triggered around money, we don't go into conversations around money feeling safe. So we need to be able to create that sufficiency for ourselves and really remember, wait a minute, I'm okay right now. I'm safe right now. I have everything I need. I have a roof over my head. I have money coming in the door. I have savings. Like everything's okay. And just breathe. If we go into conversations about money or we even think about raising our rates when we're in this triggered kind of fight or flight response, we're going to have a really difficult time making change in our lives. You are safe. You have enough. You don't need anything from them. So let's talk about billing because this also shows up in the billing arena. When you're sitting at your desk and you're tallying up the numbers on a bill and you think to yourself, they can't afford that. They can't afford that. That's that protective momming energy again, right? And then the actions that you end up taking are you don't remind yourself, like, wait a minute, did my client agree to the terms of what I'm looking at? Like, did they agree to this hourly rate? Did they agree to this flat rate service? We don't give the client agency in that relationship, and then we discount, right? You cross out numbers. You're like, oh no, no, I spent too much time on that. I should really cross that out, right? You don't communicate with your clients, right? So if you're looking at a bill and you see, there's actually some work that needs to be done that's not included in this bill, but we didn't have a conversation about it. A lot of times what I'll see lawyers do is they'll just say, "Oh, I'll just do that work for free. We didn't talk about it. I'd feel really uncomfortable if I called them up and, told them about it. I mean, it's necessary work, but it would just be it would just be too much. It would be too much for them. So I'll just do the work for them." That's the momming energy. Stay out of the momming energy, right? And when you are also in this energy, you're not believing in the value of your services. You're assuming also that your clients won't see the value of your services and how important they are. And you don't ask yourself if this is good for the long-term health of your practice. Because if you're discounting in one area, you're likely discounting in multiple areas on multiple people's bills. And that adds up to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars over the course of a quarter and definitely the course of a year. And the result is you block yourself from creating a life and a business you want to have long term. Another thought, right? Let me make sure here. That's too much, right? That's another thought. That's too much, and you feel shame, right? This is one that comes up a lot, I think, with high achieving lawyers and people pleasing high achieving lawyers, I think, right? Because, and I'm a recovering people pleaser. We look at a number and we're like, oh, that's too much. That's too much. And then we feel bad about ourselves. So we discount. Or you might notice you're doing a bill and you beat yourself up for either taking too long on a project, I put that in quotes, too long, right? Or not telling your client about a part of the project you had to work on, or the general cost of a lawyer's services, right? You're just like, "Oh my gosh, lawyers are just so expensive. It's just ridiculous." And then you fret that they're not going to pay it or that they're going to be mad at you, and then you undercut the value of your services. The result is you make yourself too much in quotes and play small at the expense of yourself and your practice. It's the equivalent of asking yourself, who do I think I am to charge this amount? I can't believe that I have the audacity to charge this amount. So I just want to offer to you that if you are charging a rate and your clients agree to it, they think you're amazing. Okay, here's another one. They're going to think I'm a bad person if I charge that much, which is really, let's turn it around. I think I'm a bad person if I charge that much. And then we're scared. And when we're scared, we're reactive. We discount. Again, we don't value our services, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we don't even open up a conversation with them if there's some other services we need to be doing for them in order for the work to be done. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And the result is you block yourself from valuing your services and yourself because you make your rates equal how nice you are and your likability. So I want you to ask yourself this. If you're seeing yourself in any of these scenarios, did your client agree to that rate? Did they know that rate when they called you on the phone, for instance, and they called you up and they said, you might have a rate that says, okay, well, you get 2 calls or you get all these services in this package, you get 2 calls, and then the hourly rate after that is $300 an hour. Did they know that when they called you? If they did, then you've got to let them take responsibility for their life and their decisions. They know exactly what's happening. They are calling you and they know the value of your services. That's why they're calling you. It's worth it to them to speak to you on this issue. Did they know the scope of the project? Did you communicate clearly with them the expectations for the time you needed to put into the project? And if not, what needs to change during your consult so you don't have these issues come up again? What kind of conversations do you need to have? What topics need to come up? What needs to go on your consult checklist? Right? That is something that is incredibly important so that you can manage expectations and then you can just go on with your life. You don't even have to think about these things. Part 2, raise your rates and communicate them confidently. This comes down to your belief in your capabilities, including your current resources and your resourcefulness, your offer, which includes your rate and the services you perform for that rate, and their ability to pay. And if your clients can't pay, they're not your ideal client. Before you talk to anyone about your rates, you want to fill yourself up. If you feel shaky going into a conversation about money, it's going to come across and you will be in a reactive state instead of a resourceful state. It will also determine your ability to be of service to your client while maintaining the integrity of your relationship with your practice. So I want you to ask yourself before you go into any conversation about your rates, right before you go into a consult, before you make any decisions about raising your rates, I want you to really ask yourself this, and I want you to write this down on a piece of paper. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do I believe in my ability to get results for this client? If it's not a 10, write down all the reasons why not. Okay, take a look at them. I really want you to ask yourself this question because you're going to start seeing your gaps in belief where you're not paying attention to just how valuable your services are, where maybe you don't believe in the value of your services. And then you can get coaching on that. But what would you need to believe to make it a 10? Write down all the beliefs you would need to have in order for it to be a 10. And then I want you to ask yourself this: what is the impact your services can have on your client's life? And write them all down. This is something that's so neglected in the legal field. I think that we just think, oh, well, we get their work done. We get their work done and we move on. But no, having the work done is just the first part, right? What's really happening is a much bigger impact. They're having a better relationship with their former spouse. They're having fewer arguments over the kids. They're able to, stop worrying about whether their assets are going to go to a family member they don't like. Their heirs aren't fighting over property and worrying about finances while they're putting a loved one to rest. Their kids are taken care of for life. They don't have to worry about medical expenses. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But I want you to do this for your particular area of practice, all of your areas of practice, so that you can really see how impactful your work is and build that confidence in the impact that your work is having on the world. Because it's not just, oh, yeah, I filled out some forms for this person. It's like, no, now they don't have to think about it. They're having peace of mind. They can go through their day knowing that everything's taken care of, and they're much nicer to other people in the world, right? They're just happier people. You're taking a weight off of them, right? They can have confidence in you. You know what you're doing, and they can just move on with their life. They don't have to think about it anymore. And then it might have even other repercussions down the road in terms of the people that particular document is impacting. See where I'm going with this? Okay. I want you to also ask yourself this question before you go into consults. What thoughts create safety or calm for you? You could actually write some of these down if you notice that you feel calm when you think them, like when I say them out loud, because if you just have a list of these thoughts before you go into a consult, you can remind yourself of these, especially if you notice yourself feeling particularly triggered when you go into these conversations talking about your rates. I have enough right now. I don't need anything from them. I'm simply here to help them with what they need. I don't need them to like me. I'm providing an important service. They appreciate my work. All right, here's the final section. Evaluate whether to remove a practice area or more confidently market another area of practice. So doing this evaluation requires doing the work in part one that we went through and bringing that awareness through here. I want you to just ask yourself these questions. I want you to know your practice areas and what you charge in each of them. How many clients do you have in each area? Where is the majority of your income coming from? And once you know the answer to that question, ask yourself if that's where you want a majority of your income to come from, because this is the creative process. This is where you get to create the practice that you want and understand, yes, I have options. When you go through these questions, you're going to discover where you might be spending too much time in your practice for too little return on that investment. You're also going to discover whether you're avoiding marketing areas of your practice you enjoy or putting off starting a practice area that really excites you, because your brain thinks it's more practical to focus on the area that's making money, right? It's so common to get into this rut, this habit of belief that we need to just follow the money. You've got to really follow what lights you up, because that's what's going to create a life that you want. I'm not saying like no money, right? We want to make money, right? We want to make sure that we're safe, but I don't want you to ignore that spark. And it doesn't take really big steps here. It just takes small steps taken consistently to build up a practice area. And if something lights you up and you're ignoring it, take a second look at it. Don't push it down, because that's just going to feel horrible. Instead, I want you to ask yourself what small step you can take this week to grow it. What is there one little thing you can do? All right, so here's what's next. 1, get coached on areas you want help in. 2, decide at least one action you will implement from what you learned today to create a practice you love. And 3, go back and rewatch this training to answer the questions, because I know that we went through this very quickly. I covered a lot. So come back periodically as you think about your rates, because you're not going to just have this one and done. You're going to want to come back periodically, maybe once every 6 months, once a year, so that you can review this and ask yourself these questions again and find out what direction you want to take your practice in. I know that this training was a deep dive into raising rates and feeling confident about your offer. And this is just a tiny part of the work that I do with my clients to help them grow their practices and help them create a practice that they love and they actually want to work in. And if this training connected with you, if you resonated with how I said things or what I said, I want to invite you to book a strategy session with me. During our strategy session, we're going to talk about what you're struggling with in your practice, and we're going to talk through what needs to happen for you to create a practice that you love and that you want to wake up to every single morning. You can book your strategy session at dinacataldo.com/strategy session. That's dinacataldo.com/strategy session. All right, my friend, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.